Well, it's a good evening from the studios of Radio FM88 in Brisbane, Australia. And tonight is our first Australian show. You probably realise now Andrina has left us after 4.5 years. We had a big farewell for her on Thursday night and introduced our new co-hosts in the UK and America. Unfortunately, it was too early for her at 5 o'clock in the morning, but else will be available Wednesday morning, our time. And of course, tonight is our first show from Australia with Zoe, who lives across the border in New South Wales, and freedom-loving country, as everybody knows. And so, without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to Zoe, who's at the very top of the page. Our guest today is from the United States, who comes and visits Australia. It's a warm welcome both to Zoe and to our guest, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. And great to be with you tonight for my very first show, and very honoured to have Roger with us. And Roger is the founder and the director of an amazing company that provides ancient wisdom, where ancient wisdom actually meets with modern medicine. So Director is with us to talk about the Academy of Healing Nutrition, which was established in 1986. It's been going for 40 years, and it's an amazing service and something I'm really particularly interested in as food as medicine. And this is where it combines Chinese as well as Ayurvedic as well as longevity studies together, where you can learn more about this from Roger. So, Roger, please tell us a bit more about why you got into this area 40 years ago.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. Well, I am actually a Kiwi, just so you know, and I have spent, a lot of time in Sydney, Australia, but the last 22 years, I actually have also lived in New York. The Academy Healing Nutrition started in Sydney, and what you find with a lot of pioneers in natural healing is that they had their own health crisis. And I was a product of the 70s. I sort of tried everything under the sun, like most of us did. And I actually ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was in London, and I started as a young man, when I was something like 22 or whatever. And what I noticed was that's when I started to experiment with food as medicine. I wasn't going to go down the Western medical track. I wasn't sort of philosophically interested in things that way. I was more, philosophically interested in Eastern religions and Eastern philosophies, from being a product of the 70s. And what I noticed within a couple of months, I had radical, change in my energy levels. I noticed that it affected me emotionally and psychologically. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And it was just based on experimenting with some, new food groups and understanding yin and yang. Like a friend of mine, I was living in London. It was winter time when I arrived, and I was kind of like eating bananas and tropical fruit, And a friend said, "Look, you're schizophrenic. You're eating out of what you need to be eating here in this cold, damp country, and start to investigate what people." What they ate to keep themselves strong here. And in those days, there was the macrobiotic movement, which kind of introduced people to yin and yang and food energetics and all of these things. But I went on to study traditional Chinese medicine. And earlier on, in Sydney, I helped to start one of Sydney's first holistic health centers. So back in the in the 80s, that was a new concept where you got a group of health practitioners like a chiropractor, and I was doing shiatsu and nutritional counseling. We had a naturopath. It was the Glebe Healing Center, actually, based in Sydney. And now those sort of centers are all over the world now, right? But back in those days, we were in the pioneering stage of all of this. And then what I noticed was when I was doing nutritional counseling, and people became very interested in health in the 80s. There was a lot of new products coming into the West, things like miso and tamari and seaweeds, and macrobiotics actually did have an initially really good effect on people because it introduced people to the Eastern philosophy. I mean, macrobiotics itself was somewhat limited. It was based on Japanese folklore medicine, which is great, but I found that I got a very much more deeper clinical training by doing my acupuncture training. And then what I noticed when I was doing nutritional counseling was that people really needed to be shown how to put all of that together. They needed the practical skills, and they needed also to be inspired with, whole food cooking, because they kind of think, oh, it's bland, and they didn't know how to cook it, and these all the new ingredients. So that's actually when I started the school, where we actually had a combination of theory and philosophy combined with the practical development of, the new recipes and tastings, and getting people inspired simply to just practice and repeat some of the recipes that we'd introduce them to, in all these new foods. And then explaining, how the Western diet really went off tracks big time since the Second World War. Thousands of chemicals in our food chain. We got away from our traditional fats and oils. 40 years ago, Zoe, I wasn't teaching the low-fat diet. By the way, I got a lot of flack for that from the naturopaths and the doctors. They all thought, we're crazy. But in Chinese medicine, first of all, fats are very, very important to build up your life force, particularly with what we call the Jing. Now, some of your listeners might be a little bit familiar with some of the concepts that we have in Chinese medicine. The Jing is your Jing, if you want to do a little internet research, that this is your deep constitutional energy. It's your life force, your blueprint for life. And, you need, the buildup of those deep hormones, the sort of the deep juice of, what a human being is about. And so, and then when you study cultures of longevity, which I did 40 years ago, there was a particular influential book that nobody read at the time. It was by a American dentist by the name of Weston Price, Weston Price, Weston Price. And in the 1920s, he studied every summer, right? Him and his wife would take off to a culture of longevity. And remember that in the 1920s, that was, like a real challenge. They'll catch the steamboat, and then they'll get on a truck, and then they'll get on a donkey, and then they'll end up at, like a village in the middle of nowhere in Switzerland. By the way, they also came to New Zealand and studied the Maori people, and they studied the Aboriginal people. And what is better known now is the blue zones. That whole thing of the blue zones came later in the writings in the 1990s. And by the way, those writers had a bit of an agenda. They weren't, if you really want to go into the cultures of longevity material, you need to read some of the Weston Price or the Sally Fallon material. So what I did, Zoe, was I combined the energetics of things like yin and yang and the 5 elements and introducing new ingredients and new recipes, and I combined that with the cultures of longevity. I mean, these people lived over 100 years. They had healthy children, they had healthy communities. But then after the Second World War, the influence of the Western diet and sugar and, flour and toxins, etc., it really, really took over. And also, the health statistics map that as well, as you know. At the turn 100 years ago, we had something like 1 in 200 people getting cancer. There's a lot of illnesses that they just didn't know. But now we have, as you know, 40% of our children have chronic illnesses. So you have to ask yourself, what the hell is going on? And that's what I did as a young man. I got involved with this earlier on. I'm still answering your question why I got involved with this, is because I noticed that when people, they can take control of their health if they're given some practical, common sense advice around nutrition and lifestyle. And it's not, and it's kind of not radical extremism, right? A lot of this is based on what we call ancient ancestral eating. A lot of the great ideas is actually what your grandmother did, and what we call ancestral eating, right? And so anyway, the training program is all about be your own doctor, understand what affects your health, understand these sort of influences, and then make gradual changes, bring in these positive dynamics, and then bit by bit the negative dynamics just fall away. It does take some time learning new culinary arts, because that's the most deepest ingrained habit we all have. Those dietary patterns that you grew up with your mother and your father and that household, and then as a teenager, and then being influenced by fast foods and all of this. It actually does take a little bit to unwind, but what happens naturally is people start to feel better, their energy levels improve, their blood sugar levels improve, they get more clarity, they get more in the flow of life, they start to understand some of the internal medicine that we have in Chinese medicine. They start to understand the warming and cooling of foods, things like this. So that's how I got involved. I noticed it in myself, and then I noticed that really, if you put just a few really good ideas together and show people how to do it, it has really a radical effect. And the school has helped tens of thousands of people over the last 40 years. It's just a wonderful feeling to be able to help people to heal themselves. And then, it's sustainable. It's not an extreme. We love the middle way. It sort of becomes just something that you do. No big deal. It's just like really good food, deep nourishment, and the sense of freedom around it as well. And also kind of to be able to understand various trendy other diets that sort of come and go. When you have yin and yang, warming and cooling, you can start to understand what suits your constitution a lot better, and then you can sort of gauge these other diets that sort of come and go. And there's always good ideas, and there's a lot of crossovers. There's a lot of crossovers with the Mediterranean diet and so forth. But you can start to energetically understand these things, yourself, not be a slave to any other, process. You can, be truly a free person. And so, yeah, that's philosophically I got involved with it, and also for my own health, I got involved with it.
Mm-hmm. That is just so up my alley. I just love it. I've been into Ayurveda myself, and I look at that, just the simple effect of hot and cold, and my body type, I can tell if it's hot and I need cooling foods, and so you're also combining Ayurveda with this as well, which is bringing in the 6 tastes, and and I've never heard of this Jing before, deep constitutional energy, the blueprint. Is that similar to Ojas or the Prakriti or the Vikriti in Ayurveda?
It is. Just so you know, my background is Chinese medicine, and in the faculty, I have another teacher, Letha Haffaday, who wrote Karma Herbs and Asian Health Secrets, and she's the expert on Ayurvedic, and we sort of share. We do a lot of crossovers from Ayurvedic to Chinese medicine, because sometimes it's just the terminology that gets in the way, but the energetics become sort of understandable in the sense that, for instance, in the body types in Chinese medicine, we have like 4 basic body types. The excess yang heat, which is your pitta.
Yep.
In Ayurvedic, there's a lot of ruddy complexion, a lot of heat involved. We have the excess yin type, the slow metabolism type, which is your kapha. The person can get easily damp and waterlogged and a little bit sluggish. And then we have what's called the yin shu. Now, yin energy is your blood, your substance, and it's your grounding force. And if that's not nourished deeply in the yin shu person, it's the vata, where it's the space. So, the vata can get very spatial and ungrounded. So we have these crossovers. But what's important to do is learn the concepts in Chinese medicine first, learn the concepts in Ayurvedic, and then you'll start to see this sort of wonderful interchange of it. Getting back to what Jing is, so that, just so your listeners sort of understand the big picture of that, it actually does start with a big picture. When you're sitting around the campfire 25,000 years ago, you notice three things. You notice good old Mother Earth below you humming away. And we know in science that there's, we're like an antenna. The human body is like an antenna, and it absorbs millions of frequencies from good old Mother Earth. Then you notice the sky energy above you, right? And the sun and the moon and the stars. That energy we call the heavens force, right? That's not a religious term. Taoism is actually quite scientific, right? And then you notice us, the world of the vegetables and the animals and the humans. So there's three major forces that is everywhere: an energy below you, an energy above, and then an energy that combines. It's like mother, father, and having a child. That's the third. So that's called the three treasures. And what often happens in these wonderful esoteric traditions like Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, and by the way, our original esoteric knowledge around food as medicine in the West, is that we take that macro view and then we put it into our body. It's that alchemical approach. So the three treasures then comes down to the three chakras in the body, like the hara, solar plexus, and the heart. And then it comes down to these three energetic essences. The Jing, which is your inherited life force, which is more housed in the kidneys in Chinese medicine. The blood and the energy, which is your solar plexus. It's the power of your digestive system making this life force every day through food and drink and breathing. And then the shun, or the spirit, which is housed in the heart, right? So we have these foods in Taoist medicine that are very, very good for the Jing, which is also like your reproductive energy, your libido, your overall, it's your ability to live a long, healthy life as well. We always have to look after our Jing, so to speak, right? And there's a lot of modern things that damage your Jing, not just the toxic food, but lifestyle and drugs and extreme living, etc. really can take out that life force. The Qi in the blood is the whole, what we call the school of the stomach and spleen, from a 6,000-year-old tradition in Taoism. Now, let me explain that a little bit. The organs in Chinese medicine are not a piece of meat. It's not the reductionist scientific methodology we're using. It's a world of associative thinking, that the organs become a season, a color, a taste, a certain cooking dynamic, and that's the way a lot of the healing happens when you start to study Taoist medicine. So the spleen and stomach is the earth element. Now, some of your listeners might have come across what's called the 5-element theory. This is just yin and yang broken down. By the way, yin and yang's the beauty of understanding yin and yang. It's not an abstract system. You see it in nature every day. That sun rising up into the east, up to the highest part of the sky and noon, that's the yang force. And then what does it do? It starts to descend down into the yin force into the night. The same thing happens in wintertime, energy is low, and then springtime, all the energy's rising. It goes to its absolutely high yang at the longest day of the year, right? And then from there, the days are getting shorter and shorter. We enter into our autumn, equinox, and then back into winter. So when you slow down that yin and yang cycle of nature, you start to see these signposts. Like the springtime we call the wood energy, the summertime we call the fire energy, late summer is earth, then we go into the metal phase and the water phase, and these become your organ groups, right? So the spleen and stomach is a yin and yang pair, and that's the basis of your digestive system, because that's why a lot of these traditions talk about warming, tonifying foods, right? Or even if it's hot, to have a warm tea rather than an iced tea, because it puts out your stomach fire, your digestive fire. So that's where the healing starts. A lot of the signs and symptoms are just simply traced back to the school of the stomach and spleen, the quality of that food, how it's prepared, and then your digestive ability, how to break that down into usable components that we call chi and blood, that then goes into nourishing every cell of your body. It nourishes your circulatory system, your nervous system, etc. And that's when you start to make these changes and start to, have some healing. For instance, just having like a healing broth. Like we've been teaching bone broth. Bone broth is actually becoming popular now, if you notice. But 40 years ago, even then, people had a lot of digestive problems, especially the younger generation, Zoe. To a degree, we were kind of lucky, our generation, because, when I grew up, we didn't have a supermarket. I think I was 7 or 8 when my mum took us to the first supermarket in Wellington, New Zealand. We used to, she used to get fresh dairy food that we didn't even have a fridge. It was like in the cool part of the house, right? And fresh meat and fresh vegetables. And my parents were kind of, they kind of grew up. I didn't grow up on a farm, but they kind of did to a degree. So they had great common sense and they had great instinct, right? They just knew that things like Coca-Cola, I mean, we'd get it on a special occasion, like at Christmas time or something, and even then, we only ate out once a year, and that was at Christmas time, It's like, so that younger generation, a couple of generations from us now, they've been, from an early age, they've had antibiotics, they've had a lot more seed oils, junk food, sugar, toxic, and so that digestive system it's shocked to death. And getting them to just do like a bone broth and how soothing that is, and the glutamine and all of that, it just starts to really heal the digestive system, get rid of the inflammation. I mean, we teach what's called the longevity diet, which is an anti-inflammatory diet. It's a high enzyme-rich diet, so we use obviously a lot of pickles and fermented foods, and of course we use things like, what macrobiotics introduce, things like miso and tamari, shoyu, these and homemade pickles. We use high quality fats and oils. Quite frankly, we start with, remember your grandma, what did she have next to the stove, Zoe? What did your grandma have next to the stove?
It was
she had lard, and that lard didn't go off, right? If you get that vegetable oil onto your, it starts to smell after 4 or 5 days, that lard never went anywhere. And that's actually a good sign of what we call food energetics, or kind of like looking at foods and the shape and where they grow and so forth, it can tell you a lot on that level, So it's a high quality diet, enzyme rich, traditionally based. And guess what? We eat from all of the food groups. We study all of we need a healing diet, and we need a tasty diet. We need like a whole food gourmet diet. And it's quite important to have a very diverse diet so that you get all of the nutrients that you need. I mean, a lot of things happen when you don't get enough vitamin D, as you know. A lot of things happen when you don't get the 103 macro and micro minerals. A lot of things happen, to your bones and to your blood and all sorts of things that can happen if you don't get all the nutrients that you need. So in my opinion, it's quite important to eat from all of the food groups, and then you choose. Some people have preferences, more of this, less of this. They start to experiment on themselves. How does it feel? And all of these things, so that you master it yourself. But by understanding the nutritional value of it and the energetics, is it warming? Is it activating? Does it slow me down? Does it help with my sleep? Or does it sort of activate me during the day more when I need to, go to several business meetings, these kind of things. And by the way, Zoe, we don't limit it to just food. It's very, very important to understand the culinary herbs. So, of course, there's a lot of things just in your garden that people should be using, as you know, and a lot of the common herbs, and spices. That's really, really important because they're antiviral, antibacterial, and of course they make food very interesting. But we take it to the next level in the Academy Healing Nutrition because there's the culinary herbs that have been used for thousands of years. And again, we do draw on Taoist Chinese culture for that. In herbalism, we have to study hundreds of herbs, but that's a different category. That's when you go to a Chinese doctor and they'll make a particular herbal remedy for your particular condition. But in the culinary arts, you actually only need to know 5 to 7 of these herbs, that you can get on the internet, or if you're lucky enough to live close to a Chinatown, you can easily get them. So I'd like to mention a few of them this evening because I love getting, if people have taken time to listen to you and me chat, I want them to take away with some practical things. The first one is astragalus, right? Easy to find, and this herb, it's by the way, the longevity diet that we teach is economical. I mean, some of the things might be a little bit more expensive to begin with, to build up your pantry with, but they're high quality. That's the most important things. The astragalus is a herb that we use for the immune system. It's multi-dimensional, these herbs. There's several other things that it works on. For instance, we use astragalus for prolapse and lifting the yang in the body and things like this. But for today's work, this is a very simple herb that you can put in to your stock and your broth. Now, why do I mention stock and broth? If you're interested in living a long, healthy life, the first thing that you master is good old grandma's bone broth, right? Because it's just so healing. But now we can put a few extra things in it that grandma didn't know about. The astragalus, just put 2 or 3 strips in that, and now you've got those astragalosides really nourish your immune system, right? And you've got to strengthen your immune system every day, in my opinion. Do something, every day. I say eat a pickle every day. It strengthens your immune system. Now, those astragalosides, the immune system just soaks it up, right? So easy to do. And the other thing you should put in your stock is a strip of kombu, C-O-M-B-U, seaweed, because as I mentioned in my introduction, we need these macro and micro minerals, and we're all seriously demineralized, not only through so much excess alcohol, sugar, stimulants, but even, with the organic food, it takes quite a while to remineralize that soil, as you might know. And so it's very, very important that we take these minerally rich foods and I would say start with the seaweed because it's better. You're much better to begin with getting those nutrients from good old Mother Earth, which is in a matrix with other components rather than supplements, right? Now, boy, there's a place for supplements. I'm not going to bag that, but always with your thinking first, try and get it from good old Mother Earth, get it from the sea, get it from the land, get it from a food that good old Mother Earth has created, because there's a whole matrix of energetic principles there, right? So put a strip of kombu into your stock, put some astragalus in, and of course your bones, cook it for several hours, and then that stock can go into, that really makes grains a lot more digestible, by the way, Zoe. So using that stock in your porridge, your oat porridge, is very appropriate. Using that stock into what we call juk, where we cook grains with a lot of, stock, and obviously putting it into your soup, and then just using the stock as a drink. You can enhance it with a little bit of ginger and garlic, or, some sort of herb that you like. So these sort of things can make a world of difference. Just doing that, if you had a bone broth, a cup, 1 or 2 cups every day for the next 3 to 4 weeks, I guarantee you'll be a different person. Now, the longest culture, when Weston Price studied these cultures, as you might have heard, Okinawa are the longest living out of the longest living, right? And that study was done, they were a fish-eating culture, and the women of those villages, they would get the fish, and of course they'd fillet the fish, but they'd keep the bones, and that would always go into the village had this big pot, right? In fact, some of them, when you're from a rich family, they were all very ornate pots. If you ever went to the Taipei Museum in Taiwan, they're actually beautiful stock pots. So the villagers would be cooking the bones, just like a good French chef would be making the stock, but they'll be putting their seaweeds, their leftover vegetable cuttings. But the fish bones are very, very nourishing, with the minerals, not only the calcium, but a lot of other factors. And then that would go into everything, if they're cooking a vegetable dish, a grain dish, you name it. Their other diet consisted of things like millet and buckwheat. They didn't have rice on that island, right? Rice didn't grow there. It was those more hardier grains like buckwheat and millet. Of course, fermented foods, miso, etc. A lot of vegetables, sea salt, sea vegetables. So there you go. So anyway, getting back to astragalus, folks might be aware now of the medicinal mushrooms. So these are very, very important to incorporate. Easy to do, Zoe. Just get some fresh shiitakes. You can get them from every supermarket in Australia and New York and England now, right? Or get them dried and put them, into stir fry, put them into soups, because those polysaccharides also nourish the immune system. This evening, let's just focus on the immune system, because, people have problems, and, his recent history. None of my family got vaccinated. We just don't, the Western medicine for us is the last thing that we would look at. There's so many other protocols that we can look at in terms of, keeping us strong and healthy. My grandson hasn't been vaccinated. Even before COVID happened, we just couldn't go there. There was no need. We have a thought of, we don't want to put any toxic in our bodies. Basically you have a choice. Do you want to go down a road where you just really nourish yourself really strongly, or do you want to go down a more toxic, artificial, and so it didn't make any sense. But we had the confidence to do that, because we are eating minerally rich food, enzyme rich food. We're not taking fast food. We're not eating processed foods, right? We're using our herbs, but we're also using our medicinal mushrooms, a little bit every week. And of course, there's some other ones that are very, very powerful that you can maybe take as a supplement, and that's the good old reishi and the chaga and the lion's mane, which is readily available now. Just about every place you walk into now, you can get even a blend of that. And I highly recommend that people start to do that because, as I said, you've got to do something like a little bit every day for that immune system, and you've got to make it intelligent, not just strong. So when you start to take these medicinal mushrooms, the mushrooms are the nervous system of the planet, right? They're not of the vegetable kingdom, as you might know. They're the fungi kingdom. But all the vegetable kingdom relies on the fungi kingdom for its communication and where to grow and where to go. And when you read about the fungi kingdom, it's phenomenal. So like treats like. So when you start to take the medicinal mushrooms, it's very good for your nervous system, very good for your thinking, very good for your brain chemistry, but also very good for the immune system. Now, you might also be aware that vitamin D is very, very important for the immune system. And people are incredibly deficient in vitamin D. Just about everybody I meet, when they get their blood work done, they will say, oh, look, I'm low in vitamin D. Well, the first thing is, so you can only get X amount from the sun. So yes, of course, you need to get out of the sun. Early morning is a good time, but you need to get the vitamin D from a food source, right? And that's a lot of our traditional foods were actually high in vitamin D. So for instance, cultures of longevity, they didn't have pasteurized milk. They had raw organic milk, right? That they would turn into what? Cottage cheese and cheeses, and they would use the milk and so forth. And of course, that's a really good source of vitamin D. And of course, it's available in most animal foods and high quality fats and oils like lard. And now, interesting enough, you also need the vitamin K to drive the vitamin D. There's this sort of lovely, synergy that happens. Vitamin K, people are incredibly low in that as well. Do you remember, I don't know, did your mother ever give you cod liver oil when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Because she was a wise mother, because that's really loaded with vitamin D, the cod liver oil. It's something that people have forgotten. Have you noticed? People don't talk about it. It's very, very important, especially for children. And if you've got low vitamin D, get back into the cod liver oil, but also get back into some of the traditional fats and oils. Stay away from the rancid seed oils. The other thing with vitamin K, guess what? The highest concentration of vitamin K is from emu.
Emus.
Now the Aboriginals went crazy over emu. That was their sacred, more so than the kangaroo. They would love to hunt the emu. And don't forget, these cultures, they didn't eat the muscle so much. They would always eat the bone marrow, as you might know, because that's where all the deep, we're talking nutrient-dense foods, right? That's the longevity diet. And they would eat the organs, and then last, they would eat the muscle. So we sort of need a combination of, that to a degree. For modern people, it's a lot with younger generations that they kind of they go, ooh, I'm not going to eat that. It's a sort of a taste thing. But there's tricks to the trade to make these things tasty and just have them in small amounts. But the highest concentration was in emu, and you can actually get, if you to Google emu oil, there's a couple of companies in Australia. And by the way, these companies do really, really well selling their vitamin K, nutrient-rich emu oil to the Americans. The Americans love it, especially in the grassroots movement of food as medicine, where, a lot of people are realizing they have to get back to their ancestral eating and what makes sense, So, yeah, hopefully good takeaways there for you.
That I mean, it's just wonderful. You know, my mother used to give me brains and liver and kidneys, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I just like she'd do it in breadcrumbs or something, and that
Yeah.
was just absolute torture. I used to hide it in the cupboard, and then one day she found them in the cupboard. That was the end of that. But what do you think about this cod liver oil? And with a lot of the fish nowadays is farmed and with antibiotics.
Oh, that cod liver oil, Zoe, never comes from fish farm. Oh, those companies are very ethical. Oh no, it comes from high quality. A lot of it comes from Scandinavia, high quality wild fish. You just have to do your homework. There's a lot of good resources. I mean, our students get all these resources. Our website, academyhealingnutrition.com, doesn't have that available to the public, but there's a website that you can check out, the Weston Price website, where there's a lot of really good resources there and high quality products. So if you want to research high quality, cod liver oil, that's a good one to go to. But there's some, really high quality products out there these days. That's not a problem. Yes, and of course, absolutely, you've got to go for the wild fish. That's the thing, Zoe. Like, be prepared to spend it. It's about quality, right? Not quantity, right?
Yeah. And I heard you say before when you talked about astragalus, you said astragalus. You said have a pickle a day. What kind of pickle?
Have a range. For instance, it's part of that whole. Have a diversity of things, like have a range of herbal teas, have a range of grains that you soak overnight and eat in different ways, sprout them and, make some sourdough bread and, have a range of beans, have a range of grass-fed animal and so forth. It's important. And with fermented food, I'll just finish there. Have a range of fermented and pickles. So for instance, kimchi is really good. Just good old dill pickles. There's some lovely Japanese pickles, the takuan. You can simply make a quick pickle, especially in the summertime. You can get sort of radishes and, cucumber, just a little bit of salt and a little bit of rice vinegar, or, and then within an hour or two, you've got a really good light pickle for the summer. So, have a variety, but, don't get the pickles that are got sugar and, chemicals in them. You have to be wise. So you can either make it yourself or buy sauerkraut. Basically modern people don't really have that time to make those things themselves. So there's a lot of good high quality pickles available in most health food stores. So anything from sauerkraut to kimchi to homemade pickles to dill, but have a it really aids your digestion and your liver. Your liver really needs these enzyme rich food. Your liver does 5,000 functions within that last second. It's a chemical factory. And so it needs these high enzyme foods. It needs these fermented foods. You don't have to go overboard with it. Just a little bit of fermented food every day. Yeah.
I think farmers markets are really good too. I live in Mullumbimby, and the farmers markets that we have here and in Byron Shire and New Brighton, they almost have a farmers market just about every day where people are making homemade pickles and you can get shiitake mushroom.
I love going to that Mullumbimby.
It's fabulous. Yeah.
There's a lady there that makes really high quality dairy.
Yes.
It just melts in your mouth. That cottage cheese that she's got, it's just incredible. Now, a lot of people put dairy food down, Zoe, you might notice, because in Chinese medicine, it's a little bit more damp. It's yin, it's moisture creating, but you also need that yin energy. Otherwise, you're going to get dry symptoms. You're going to get a lot of sleeping problems if you don't have that deep yin. But it's just important to have, I wouldn't buy commercial dairy products, right? And I don't buy pasteurized milk. when it comes to dairy food, you really want the highest quality you can get. Now, in America, we can get, what's interesting is talk about the politics of food. We have, in New York, we have access to some of the highest quality foods on the planet. And guess where it comes from?
Australia.
No.
New Zealand.
No, it comes from Pennsylvania. It comes from the Amish farmers.
Oh, right. Oh, those guys are pretty healthy.
And by the way, it's a covert operation, right? A bit like, the bootlegging from days gone by. It because it's illegal. I mean, this is how this is the politics now. How dare they take away our ancestral food, and how dare they make these ridiculous things like we can't get our organic raw milk and the products that are made from that. See, when you heat treat milk, you take out all the enzymes that nature put in there for you to digest it, and that's where the problem has come from dairy food, right?
Yes.
That commercial dairy food, yes, that's toxic, and the casein and the heat treatment gets hardened, and that's really hard on the liver, and it's inflammatory, and it's mucus producing, and it slows you down. You get congestion and lung problems, all sorts of things. But what's medicinal is the high quality dairy food, and we get that smuggled over the border from Pennsylvania into New York State, right? And they drop it off at community centers and churches, and you put an order in, and it's the way we got around the law, because they can't sell it in the shops. But in Australia, we had a lot of problems with that in the years gone by, and just crazy bureaucrats denying us high quality food. Fortunately, they started to listen to us, and now you can, in various parts of Australia, get high quality, organic, unpasteurized dairy food, right? Which is incredibly digestible, very nutrient dense, and very healing for a lot of people with certain conditions.
Yeah, I find dairy food, as I've got older, whether they're tampering with it or what's going on, but the dairy does give me a lot of mucus. But I can have buttermilk as long as I put in some cumin powder, some ginger powder, and black pepper, and some water.
That helps to make, just like Ayurvedic, as you know. I mean, traditionally, don't forget, they were using unpasteurized milk. The first thing that a baby has in India is, breast milk with a bit of turmeric, or unpasteurized milk with a bit of turmeric, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
And what about combinations in your course? Do you deal with that?
What?
Sorry, Jeff, did you say something?
I would say, actually,
sorry, Zoe, could you repeat what Jeff said? It broke up.
Jeff, you'll have to mute me if you want to say something.
No, I should be right.
Oh, go on.
Sally Fallon mentioned her at the beginning. Mentioned Sally Fallon.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Sally Fallon, Fallon, I think. Sally Fallon, Nourishing Traditions. Her book is. So what happened there, Jeffrey? Good question. You see, Weston Price, he wrote his books back in the 1930s after visiting over 14 cultures of longevity. And this guy was he was brilliant. And by the way, the reason why he did this, even in America at that time in the leading up to the 1920s, he was a dentist, and he couldn't understand how, Americans were losing their dental health, right? Because obviously, even in those days, you had a lot more sugar, and the seed oils were coming in, and so forth. And so he couldn't figure it out, and he was asking his colleagues, "Well, what's going on? People, they're not as healthy as our previous generation." Nobody could answer him, so he spent virtually the next 14 years, every summer, him and his wife, off to a cultures of longevity, right? Really, they went all over the world. and he documented particularly in his first book. But it's I read it, and that's remember I combined that material with Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic. So our curriculum, nobody else has done that with the Chinese herbs. It's quite a unique training in that regards, right? But that book is quite dense and hard to pull apart, right? So Sally, in the 1990s, right, later on, she started the Western Price Foundation, and she wrote that book called Nourishing Traditions. I would say to everybody listening to this, to get hold of that book, to start to tap into the grassroots global movement about food as medicine, getting back to our ancestral roots, getting back to our wise traditions, as Sally would say. It's a wonderful book. It doesn't go into the energetics. It doesn't go into the yin and yang. It's not esoteric in any way. I mean, for me, that's the missing component. But it's a wonderful book about just getting back to the basics and some really good recipes to start off with, etc. And she is a wonderful human being. They put on a conference every year in America, and they all do these guys have been behind the anti-vaccine as well. They're even though they're grassroots and very organic, very earthy, they're really with it, and they're really into health freedom and regaining our sense of who we are and our own ability to heal ourselves, and particularly with our children as well. There's a big focus on children's health. So she's written a number of books, not just, but that's the one to start with.
Right. And what about food combinations? How do you see that? Like you're talking about a lot of different foods, but when they all get together inside the stomach, how does that work?
It works as nature is intended. We've always done. We don't get conceptual about that. I think it's a little bit that is part of the reductionist scientific methodology. There's obviously a place for that. Who doesn't love science? But when you get into breaking things down and go, oh, that's going to be more acid than this one, and you should eat it at a different time and not combine it, I go, no, thanks. I'm just going to look at what we did 100 years ago, at what these traditional cultures did, and yes, they combined those grains and beans, but those beans, they put the knuckle, they put the bone in with it, the bone broth, which actually makes the beans digestible, and it makes the grains, and the grains you got to make digestible by soaking them overnight, and so there's all these tricks. So in answer to your question, that's never an issue for me. What is an issue is making it digestible in the first place, right? And making it presentable, colorful, right? And often we do things in separate bowls anyway, and then the person can have a bit more of this and a bit more of that. There's usually 2 or 3 dishes at a meal. You still got to think of your macro nutrition, your complex carbohydrates, your protein, your fats, and then of course your range of nutrients from vegetables and fruits, nuts, seeds, and berries. But you've got a lot of these foods you do have to soak overnight. They do have phytic acid in it. You've got to get rid of it, otherwise you get a lot of irritation. So in answer to your question, we just rely on what feels good, how was your digestion with that combination, but we don't break it down into separating foods and eating them at different times. But common sense tells you not to eat fruit with your main meal. Fruit is something that you can enjoy after as a snack. It doesn't combine very well. But then again, some dishes rely on, one of our favorites is, the red cabbage with a bit of salt. You press it for a bit. Then you you add a little bit of vinegar and some citrus to that, So here and there, you can add a little bit of fruit to some vegetable dishes. And of course, chutneys and things. But generally speaking, that's eaten like in between meals or as a snack So there's some basic food combinations that we do avoid, and of course there are religious aspects there for some people. That's fine, but yeah, we don't like to get overly conceptual with things.
Yeah. Okay. And before you started, you were talking a little bit about the Rudolf Steiner approach. How does that fit in?
Well, like a lot of Steiner's work, it's based on the European esoteric approach, and basically his approach was very good. It was like, what did the Germanic tribes eat, like 100 years ago, right? Yeah. And, these tribes were very, very strong, and just like the Romans, you have to ask, or just like even the British, you have to ask, what the hell is going on there? They conquered half the planet, You can go, what were they eating? What made them strong? But his diet was pretty much the Germanic natural diet, which is what we celebrate. We celebrate all of those traditional ancestry diets. The trick is, Zoe, how do you put it into your modern life? Right? What are you going to eat for breakfast tomorrow? What are you going to spend your hard-earned money on when you go shopping next? That's the trick. It's all about integration now. There's a lot of good information there. There's good training, but then, so what we do with the school is we gather up once a year, a group of students, and we only have the intake once a year. And by the way, we are in enrollment mode now, right? And we are doing online orientations, once a month. So there's a few more happening. The program starts at the end of January in 2026. And so what we do is, there needs to be quite a bit, it's a professional training course to be, you can become a health coach, right? But everybody's doing it for their own health journey and to develop their consciousness. It's a personal development course, right? And I don't know what I don't know how I got onto. Why did I get onto that, Zoe? Now I'm doing a little plug for the school.
No, good. I want to hear about it because I want to do the course. I love the fact that you do the cooking. And,
actually, and by the way, thanks. So that's why I got onto this. First of all, I wanted to say there's a lot of support and mentoring. Even though these students are, very motivated, healing is a community effort as well, So we make a lot of effort to get the groups together. It's an online course now, and there's 10 modules spaced over the year that you watch in your own time, but we have Q&A sessions, and I like to stress half of that curriculum, this is something that I've always done since the academy started, half of the curriculum is practical training, developing those skill sets and seriously looking at the recipes and using those recipes, right, and encouraging the use of those ingredients and recipes, because that's where the healing happens. So as I said to you, it's all about integration now, right? Yeah. So we cover it all with anything to do with food as medicine. We do have a barefoot doctor training as well. We do a little bit of home remedies, kitchen pharmacy, we call it, a little bit of acupressure, body work, that's from the barefoot doctor tradition. We also have one module on cutting edge supplements. It's important to know that. By the way, Zoe, it's for the first time, you might guess that Western nutrition theory was a little bit boring for me, 45 years ago when I started to heal myself. It was easy. I'm not putting it down, folks, if, I don't want to sound like that. But for me personally, it was really easy to read about what a vitamin C looks like and how many amino acids you need, right? Which is our Western analytical approach. What I was more interested in is the energetics and the vibrational. We live in a vibrational world, and that to me was the exciting part. And a lot of the science around that was done 100 years ago, right? And so it was just a little bit boring. And a lot of those courses were just based on supplements, what supplements you do. But now we have millions of dollars being spent just in the last 7 years on the whole anti-aging, theme. And so now there's really, really strong research that's done with supplements. So you do need to know the cutting edge supplements. And I have one module that we look at the clinically proven supplements. It's good to know about the supplements that are good for your blood sugar, your brain chemistry, that are all off the shelf. People could get access to these very, very easy, And we have a business training as well, because it is, for those who want to make a career out of helping others and being a longevity diet specialist and helping people make that transition from a toxic diet to a deep nutrient of healing diet, right? So that's starts early next year, and we do have some, the usual thing with promotion. We have, when we do these orientations over the next month or two, we have deals that we throw people. This is the time of the year to get the deals. Like $1,000 off if you put your deposit on now and all of that. So on that website, academyhealingnutrition.com, you can go and I think get into the database, put your name down to receive the newsletter. And then the newsletters highlight, not only do they send you some recipes and all of that, but they will give you the date and your ability to sign up for the next orientation, which would be early next month.
December.
Yeah, we got another one in December. We've got another one in January before the course starts.
Right. Well, it looks pretty good, and it's been around for a long time, and I don't think we can go wrong combining food, using food as medicine. There definitely are a lot of young people with immune problems and digestive problems. Like, we're just seeing it everywhere. So much sickness. I've never seen so much sickness around. And the crappy food that's out there. I know you can buy bone broth from supermarkets and things. I try not to shop in supermarkets. I think people really need to support the farmers markets. And,
absolutely. I agree.
Every area, and you can get fresh food. And if we support those farmers, then we're not flying food all the way over from Mexico. They talk about climate change, but what problem is it if you buy garlic and it's come from Mexico or something? Like, we could buy it locally from our own farmers if we support them. It's just
exactly.
Yeah. And we really need to do that. And we need to, but a lot of young people, they'll say to me that they're buying from the supermarket because it's cheaper. And
that's a mindset though, isn't it, Zoe?
Yeah, and is it really cheaper? If it's being flown over in an aeroplane and it's using, petrol and all of that.
Well, you got to get your priorities right in this day and age. Do you want to live a long, healthy life, or do you want to end up with, a chronic degenerative disease? I mean, hello, wake up and smell the coffee. So it's time to actually think about the quality of your food, make it a priority, right?
Yeah.
Don't get into that, lazy, it's cheaper to buy this and the fast food. And you're not going to win, guys. You're not going to win with that attitude. You'll win with starting to do some home cooking, first of all, because that's going to save you a lot of money. The younger generation eats out at restaurants all the time. Boy, talk about, money going out the door, at least, half, yes, if you're, when you're that age, obviously you want to be out and about and socialize, of course, but, have that grounding, ritual of getting to know some really good cooking methodologies, get interested in these new ingredients, get interested in, some of these wonderful philosophies, that, really good nourishment for the mind and your personal development. And you will save money big time, because you become more productive, more creative. You'll never miss a day. If you want to develop your own entrepreneurship, your own business, you'll have the clarity. And by the way, we call this radiant health. When you start to get into the herbs and some of the superfoods, it takes you to another level beyond just normal health, right? It means that you can take on a lot more in your life, a lot more challenges, a lot more things that you might want to achieve in your life goals, and you'll have the chi, the energy to do it. So don't muck around with, oh yes, it's cheaper and fast food. No, that's the road that takes you down to a lot of mental illness, chronic diseases, depression, everything. Start to select some better, go to the farmers market, start picking the brains of Chinese medicine people, get some basic things done like soups and broths, right? And get some alternative things in your cupboard so that you're not just drinking coffee all day. Have the herbal teas there. Get to know how to make a miso soup. If you get a hangover, that's the best cure ever, right? So yeah, and it's something that we do every day, what we put into our body. So 45 years ago, I thought, oh, that's worth studying. I want to know about how that affects me, what energy it is, where it's from. It's worth studying, for a couple of years, and then it's just something that you do naturally. You don't have to think about it, and your judgment gets a lot better when you travel. I mean, we train students so that when they travel, they don't get sick. They'll know what to eat in a cold climate. They'll know what to eat in a hot climate. They'll know what to do if they had some sort of imbalance, some home remedy, some herb, some drink that they could take, and as I said, this is not a boring restrictive. This is not a restrictive approach. We open up the doors of perception around food energetics. It becomes a lot more diverse and interesting, right? So you learn a whole lot of new things coming in. It's not a lot of diets get mentioned about, they restrict you in this, that, and the other, Now, there's a place sometimes for doing that for a short term, like, going 100% vegetarian for a couple of weeks just to clear the channels, particularly good in the summertime. That's what people used to do. They, if things got overwhelmed, they'd go to the seaside, they'd do a little bit of farming at that retreat, and they would have like a vegetarian diet for a couple of weeks. And that's what we call like a more detoxifying, clearing diet. But it's not what you need when you're back in the city and you're having to get the school, the kids to school and get to that business meeting. You need, your yin and yang foods, for that. So a lot of the modern diets are sort of sometimes very restrictive, very extreme. They go from that, carnivore diet, which is an incredibly yang diet, to the vegan diet, incredibly yin calling. And of course, there's a lot of nutrients that are missing from both. So why do that? Why not take the middle way, right? I mean, both of them have got some good ideas there, but take the middle way and start to work with yin and yang, animal and vegetable, and work out how to balance. You can be, I just don't know why people go to these extremes all the time,
That you're absolutely right. But do you know what I think? I was very lucky because my father grew up on a farm. And so I would go to the farm and we'd walk around the garden and he'd give me food and I'd just eat it. But some people are brought up without that background. And so they might have comfort foods. Their comfort foods when they're feeling emotionally distressed or something might be foods that are not so healthy for them. And this is why, the emotions and food going together and the memories, these are habits people need to break. And doing your course, spending that time regularly and looking at the emotions and looking at how you feel after you eat something. Do I feel heavy? Do I feel light? Do I feel agitated? It's so connected. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Absolutely. By the way, we also talk about substitution. I mean, that comfort food is very important for us. It's when we feel, we're back in our bodies, we're slowing down, but as you said, the quality of that is not good sometimes. So sometimes you just need to know how to substitute, like instead of eating potatoes all the time, which is a nightshade. Well, by the way, we have a concept that everything is medicine. Sugar is medicine, marijuana is medicine, you name it, whatever. Whether it's appropriate or not, that's another question. But, sometimes when you're eating too many potatoes, which are a nightshade family, it mightn't be very good medicine for you, but you love that quality, right? That texture, that comfort. You can do something similar with cauliflower, as you might know. When you get the cauliflower and you just cook it and then you mash it up and put a little bit of cream and salt in there, and it's like it. And of course, anything to do with the cabbage family, that broccoli and cabbage family, if you don't want to get cancer, particularly breast cancer, by the way, right? You want to be not eating those potatoes so much. You want to be eating that cauliflower family with all the sulfate in it, because it just balance out the estrogen and it detoxifies the liver and all sorts of things, So we do talk about substitution, because we have a big emotional response to food. Absolutely, I agree with you, but yeah, you gotta get clever a little bit,
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just feeding that. If that's involved with negativity, by the way, a good way of breaking that out, or trauma from your childhood, a good way of breaking out of that is breaking out of those food patterns that enforce that emotionally into you. And when you have these new patterns, that old trauma starts to dissipate. We call that in Chinese medicine the free flow of energy. Health is the free flow. Emotional blockages, etc., is stuck energy. It's stuck qi. Particularly associated with the liver energy in Chinese medicine. Yeah. So all of these organs have emotions, psychological attributes, fatigue, overly fearful, that's all kidney stuff. Sleeping problems, that's a kidney yin deficiency. When people are over angry all the time, hot-headed, argumentative, that's a liver. Impatient, that's hot liver. Digestive syndromes, as I mentioned, are all traced back to the school of the stomach and the spleen, right? Your relationship to food. Metal is the lungs and large intestine. And if you're not oxygenating your blood, your brain gets, a little bit slow, spirited, and it can lead into depression and all sorts of things. So that 5-element theory has, the taste, the food groups, the cooking styles, the herbs, all associated with strengthening those organs so that the emotions become more positive, the life force becomes stronger, the immune system becomes stronger, and you can get on with life, get on with what you want to do and not be, troubled with ill health and sluggish in the morning and getting cranky all the time, or having blood sugar problems all the time, or slowly developing bit by bit every day a degenerative disease. Cancer doesn't come on fast, as you know, so it comes on over, many decades sometimes,
Yeah. So when you said before about kidneys being yin, and it could be
we have a yin and yang. We have a kidney yang.
Could it be either too much yin or too little yin?
Yeah, so to speak, yes. Often deficient, by the way, with kidneys.
Right.
Each organ has a particular, dynamic that it can suffer from. So think of it this way, that here's a good example. I mentioned the water element before, and water is the kidneys and bladder, and the phase of energy is nighttime, similar to the winter time. It's a dormant time, right? Where we go to sleep. So if you don't have enough yin energy in the body, sleep is yin, nighttime is yin, daytime is yang, So during the day you want the energy, and then at night you want the sleep. If you have things that are always triggering the yang, coffee, sugar, stimulants, stress building up, and then nicotine on top of that, and drugs, you're just taking out the sap, the blood and the yin suffer. So we have herbs and dishes that start to build up that nice kidney yin that helps you to. So if you don't have enough of that yin, we call it yin deficient, and that's where insomnia comes from, right? So some good dishes for that are the black bean dishes are really, really good for insomnia. Technically speaking, potatoes are very good for insomnia because they're a yin vegetable. They slow you down. A couch potato, right? Somebody who's very sluggish and slow down, but some people need that to slow down. High quality dairy food is very, very good for sleeping problems. And some of the meats, like particularly duck, is very, very good. It's a heavy yin food so people who have got those chronic insomnia problems, duck sauteed with some vegetables is very, very good. And also the seaweeds are very, very good for insomnia because they build up the yin. They're a water element. They're from the ocean. So they help our ocean, which is what the kidneys control.
Yeah, right. So when I don't sleep well, then I go, oh, I've woken up. I better go to the toilet just in case I need to go to the toilet and I can't go back to sleep. So you're talking about kidneys and water and yin.
Yeah.
So I'd be better off having a bowl of potatoes before I go to bed.
Maybe. Or avocado is quite good for sleep as well. Yeah, because it's and just getting high quality. Use a little bit more fat in your cooking. Use the butter and the ghee, the coconut oil, because that is the way you build up your yin, right?
Yeah, right.
And that helps, and that actually helps. It's anti-inflammatory. And you've heard me say, get back to your lard and your tallow.
Yeah.
I mean, then there's preferences. Some people are more vegetarian orientated, so they might just use the ghee and the coconut oil, right? And but definitely, cook with those high quality fats, those saturated fats, right? Not the polysaturated, unsaturated fats, high quality. Yeah.
I remember
and
as
of course
a kid,
that's where you get your omega-3 from,
Yeah, right. Yeah. I remember as a kid my mum making potato chips with lard, deep frying your
And
potatoes.
don't they taste really good? The fish and chips.
Yeah.
As a kid, Mum did have fish in Wellington, New Zealand. We grew up in Island Bay, which was actually a fishing village, and
Beautiful.
it was fish and chips every Friday night. We weren't Catholic, but it was fish and chips on the Friday, and it was done in lard, and they were just the best chips. And then later on in life, I noticed, when I had fish and chips, that they just weren't the same,
No,
Now
they're
they cook
usually
in vegetable oil, and boy, they don't really change that. They don't change that oil much.
no.
It's really
I know.
toxic.
Very
It's really.
careful.
I do have a question.
I just want to so this course actually creates you get a certificate, you become your therapist, teacher qualifications. Is that what's happening with the course?
Coaching. Yeah, health coach.
Wow.
Yeah, and longevity diet. Yeah, it's a certificate program. Yep. On the website you can, or on the orientations we go through who recognizes it, what you can do, how you can make a business out of it. Yep, we go through all of that.
Assignments? Do you have written assignments and things? Do you have written?
We have. Yeah, because we have. I would call it an experiential course. That's the first thing.
Well, that's good.
You can. It's not full time. You still keep your job and pick up the kids and all of that. It's a modular system. So in every month there's a module that you watch, right? And I'm not the only teacher. There's 4 other teachers, right? And we have like Q&A sessions, 2 of them a month. we have a good group, how you get everybody together with Facebook or whatever they use, right? And there's a whole team behind this. There's like 10 people behind this, right?
Yeah, okay.
That help the students, and there's mentoring. So that first module, for instance, module 1, I go through all the energetics and the ingredients of the longevity diet and introduce you to the 3 treasures, the concept of Jing, the concept of the digestive power, and so forth. Then the next module is your first practical cooking with Inga, right? And we're able to achieve that online, right? And we also have a cook-along as well. Then the next module, it's a different subject. It's like health assessment. We have a whole module there on health assessment. Health assessment's really important. You need some sort of compass, so that when you look at your tongue in the morning, you can see, oh, look, it's, too damp, I'm like a white, I'm eating too many mucus foods, or these signs and symptoms, which seem to be abstract, we put them into a relationship with, yin and yang and the 5 elements. And so you can start to do internal medicine. It's a fascinating study, and a little bit of facial reading, and of course the body types, right? Then the next module is a cooking one. We do the soups and broths. It's sort of like gourmet whole food cooking to begin with, but then we do the superfoods, the elixirs that you can make wonderful things with cacao and superfoods, and then we have a barefoot doctor with home remedies, and then we have my biohacking module, and then we have a really interesting one, cooking with the Chinese herbs. That's particularly my favorite one to watch, with Nam Singh, who has this incredible, fascinating background. He's African American, but he kind of grew up in Taiwan in a Taoist monastery, and they don't exist anymore. And he learned all of the arts of Tao, acupuncture, feng shui, martial arts, but his particular passion was cooking. So he teaches how to cook with these culinary herbs that we mentioned this evening about astragalus, and there's another half a dozen that you should really learn. Dong Quai. Some of your listeners might have heard of Dong Quai. It's the woman's herb. This is what helps to harmonize the cycle. Chinese women take this herb every month. They just buy it from Chinatown, but we show you how to cook with it, make a tea with it, and there's several other herbs, like, for instance, the number 1 longevity herb that nobody knows about is Rehmannia, Rehmannia, Rehmannia. And this is the number 1 herb in Chinese medicine that helps you live to 120 and beyond, right? Nobody knows about it, and guess what? It's cheap as anything, right? Unlike some of the supplements that are coming out for anti-aging, which cost you $150 a month, By the way, a lot of them are just extractions out of Chinese herbs, particularly the astragalus for the telomeres, but that's another subject. Rehmannia you can buy. You can make a lovely kind of broth from it that's coffee-like. You put your red dates in that, a little touch of vanilla at the end. You've got a really wonderful coffee-like brew that's strengthening your Jing, strengthening your kidney energy, making your hair darker, keeping your teeth strong, keeping your bones strong, right? The simple little herb that nobody knows about, but that's what we teach our students. And that's why they become longevity diet specialists. And that's with NAMS. And then we've got the Ayurvedic with Lifa. I've worked with these people over 20 years, this particular faculty at the moment. And then we've got the business training with Eden, and she's phenomenal. She's a holistic business coach, and takes our students about how, if you want to, with this. And by the way, a lot of our students have phenomenally done well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fabulous, Roger. Thank you for coming and sharing
good
this.
catching up with you. Yeah. Yeah,
you
good
very
one, guys. Great
And
radio show you got here.
Yeah, and you're coming back in 2 weeks. You just want to give us a bit of an idea about this, not next Monday, but the following Monday, what you're going to be talking about?
Sure. Well, I like to take a holistic approach, not just, with healing and etc. There's also, we all, to a degree, should, become a little guardian of the planet. Everybody can help a little bit. It might be that forest, it might be cleaning up that river or whatever. My thing was technologies, and I got involved with, how we can actually, maybe make a transition to more interesting technologies. And so I got involved with cold fusion, COL. Some people think I'm saying coal. It's cold, as in like nanonized nickel and hydrogen.
Yeah.
And I've got involved with what we call a great Australian invention by Malcolm Bendall, the thunderstorm generator, which I'm going to introduce your listeners to in 2 weeks' time. And we can talk about implosion instead of explosion, and how that creates, a vortex of energy that also creates voltage, and that can be used for agriculture and re-energizing water. That's called fractal water. So we'll just talk about a couple of these emerging technologies that I've been involved with. I have a company called Breakthrough Technologies. In one sense, I've always felt that I was on the cutting edge of nutrition, introducing, cultures of longevity, thinking outside of the box, not taking the conventional method, but really, trying to be a truth seeker with all of that. And I've done something similar with the technologies. I've been helping inventors who have been thinking outside of the box. This is not your normal academic approach. It's like the wild and crazy inventors who are doing amazing things. And that's going to create a new paradigm for energy production and helping to lift third world communities out of, they need electricity and water that we have every day, and as you know, they don't, and that's a crime, if you ask me.
I think we're struggling with it here in Australia, shutting down all our energy systems, and that's another discussion.
I don't think there should be any need for that.
There should be no need for that. I actually told my son about what you did, and he's 35, and he thought it was really exciting.
Good one, Zoe. We'll talk about how we can actually use fossil fuels in a clean way,
Yeah.
We're sitting on, 5,000 years of fossil fuel energy. The thing is, you just need to be able to clean it up and utilize it really, really well, so it's not polluting anymore, right? So we can talk about that. Yeah.
Fabulous. All right, so we'll catch up with you in a fortnight. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Catch you soon.
Hey, I have a big question for you. When I did my first trip to the UK, when you travel out of your area, it's very hard to go to the toilet for number twos, and you get blocked. And then, because my mates weekend, this gentleman came up to me and said, "Your magnetic field is out of balance because you've come across the equator and the consequence of jet lag." And he said, "Lay on the ground. And I want you to face north." Yeah. And then he went and put magnets on my shoulder, my hips, and my ankle. And it only took about 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, I was recalibrated to actually operating in the Northern Hemisphere. And all of a sudden, I just jumped to my feet and had no problems going to the toilet straight away.
Yeah, but you're aligned more with the magnetic stream, is what you're saying. And rebalance the polarity by the sounds of it.
Yeah, because when you have water and you down the Northern Hemisphere Southern Hemisphere or Northern Hemisphere, and you pull the plug and the water goes anti-clockwise and clockwise. It's like, because we're living in the Southern Hemisphere, our body clock and our whole mechanism is in that same alignment, and all of a sudden we go across the equator, and then we're actually in a different. Your whole body's trying to move around and swivel it around in anti-clockwise or clockwise direction, depending whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. That guy with his magnets, it was quite interesting.
Yeah. No, it's something that we can do in acupuncture as well, help to rebalance that. Okay, guys.
See you in the. Thank you very, very much.
Bye.
Guys, see you next week.
Oh, he went quick. All right. It's very lovely.
Yeah, he's pretty smart, eh?
Yeah, he's very good.
I have never seen him so animated, and I've known him for a long time. Usually you can see, I thought maybe he's a bit autistic or something, but he's actually so animated and so passionate about what he does. And I just love it. I mean, I'd love to do that course. I think it sounds fantastic.
I met Sally Fallon over in the UK with her husband, Jeff Morrell, who was a psychic surgeon. So,
really? Psychic surgeon?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Story for another time. All right.
Yeah, because it's 9:30. I'm exhausted. I've got to go. Anyway, the Toothless Wonder is saying good night. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Right. So I'm just going to play before we go a little introduction here. Obviously, with Andrina having a big farewell on Thursday. So just like to introduce our new co-hosts. And so for our Australian and New Zealand viewers and guests, you can contact Zoe at radiofm88.com.au. For those in the States, Central and South America, North America, it's Elise. She's bilingual, so she speaks Spanish and as well as English. And we had Pauline, which she's been christened in India. She's pretty. So for the UK, European, Ireland viewers, and for everybody else in the world, just contact info at Radio FM88. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Zoe.
Yeah, thank you too for manning the controls.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Thank you very, very much, and thank you for organising.
How can I share this with my friends? Hey, if anyone wants to watch it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Bye now. See you next week.